I'm not sure how you guys are going to do this. If Elon Musk enters the room, do you play Hail to the Chief, or is that Donald Trump? Is it Mr. President Musk? Here we have the world's richest man, Congressman, who contributed, I believe, at last public disclosure, somewhere between 250 and 270 million dollars to the effort to get Donald Trump elected, actively intruding himself in the legislative process in a way we've never seen before, and now he's doing it to other countries. Um, I do want to ask you about the relationship between the Trump administration and Elon Musk, but quite frankly, even other wealthy social media users, because not to throw a lot at you, earlier today, Donald Trump said at Mar-a-Lago that he believes that the recent changes made by Mark Zuckerberg to Facebook and Instagram about, moving their moderation team from California to Texas and removing fact checkers. He also contributed $1 million to Trump's inauguration fund. Trump himself admitted he thinks it's because it's the threats he's made against Musk or against Zuckerberg in the past, including the threat to jail him for life. So can you talk about this oligarchic, nexus, which is at the heart of the Trump administration between Elon Musk and others?
It's very scary. And, Jeff Bezos squashing a political cartoon in the Washington Post related to him giving money to the dear leader, Donald Trump. The fact that there are so many tech moguls who are giving money to Trump's inauguration, which we all know is the fastest way to his heart. It's very scary that Trump so clearly has given over some degree of control to the world's wealthiest man. And it's even scarier when you start to hear the rumors about Donald Trump selling Truth Social to Elon Musk's X, both private companies. Who's going to gauge whether or not this is a complete windfall? So Trump has every financial interest to suck up to Musk and is clearly doing that. And of course, we know he doesn't care about the American people. He doesn't care about the public interest. He cares solely about himself. And so I think if I give the best gloss I can put on this is that some of these business leaders believe that they get more bees with honey than vinegar. And that if they make nice with Trump, they'll be spared his irrational wrath. The problem with that is that's all fine and dandy if you're talking about tariffs or if you're, talking about business or, business dealings. But if Donald Trump starts to erode and undermine our democracy, upon which all of these oligarchs rely, all of their businesses are dependent on our democracy, our democratic values, our capital markets, our infrastructure, economic infrastructure that we have here, and they remain silent, then they are complicit in the destruction of our democracy. Because in the first term, a lot of business leaders stood up against Trump, some of the immigration policies, some of the other anti-democratic efforts. There was a strong backlash that Trump faced, not just from the people, but also from business leaders who are the ones that he clearly listens to the most. If they're all now as sycophantish as Kash Patel and the Republicans in the House and the Senate, then we are descending into some really, really dark and scary days. And so it is very concerning, and will be especially concerning if they go along with Trump's worst impulses.
Well, and that segues to what is, in my opinion, the most important question. And this is something that you're actually the first elected official that I'm starting to ask this question to, but it's one moving forward. I'm going to be speaking tomorrow with Senator Whitehouse, and I plan to ask him this question as well. But let's consider the current landscape. The presidency is about to be turned over to a naked authoritarian who, again, just today said, yeah, Me threatening to jail a social media mogul is why he is making changes to his platform, which will benefit me. Staggering. He has the presidency. His party will have the House. It will have the Senate. It has a supermajority on the Supreme Court, a majority of state legislatures. The biggest mainstream news network is basically a Republican propaganda piece, Fox. They had to pay nearly $800 million in a loyalty tithe effectively to Trump. You have digital media like the Daily Wire, Tim Pool, Joe Rogan, and others, which have a right-wing bent. You have all of these things. You have Elon Musk, the world's richest man, and Twitter and all the power that that wields as well. With all of this in mind, Congressman, a lot of people, myself included, I'm not necessarily the morale captain here in terms of YouTube commentary. I try to keep it real. A lot of us are concerned, and we're looking to our elected officials for reassurance that they are aware that this is not business as usual. This is not just, this is not Mitt Romney winning in 2012. This is not John McCain winning in 2008. This is something very different. It's actually very different than Trump winning in 2016. And what we want to know is, do you all recognize that this is not business as usual? Are you working on a plan? I'm sure you don't have one yet because this is huge, right? This is a work in progress. But are you working on a strategy to take power? And then when you take power in the next election or next elections, is there a plan to wield that power decisively? Not exactly the same as Republicans do, obviously, but boldly, to not just temporarily hold it back the way that President Biden did, with all due respect to the president, but to reverse that momentum. Can you talk about that a bit? Because I think people are looking for reassurance. Not that everything is okay, but that you know what the situation is and it is being taken seriously.
Yeah, look, the short answer is absolutely. And I got into this world by being the lead counsel on Donald Trump's first impeachment inquiry, where he withheld military assistance to Ukraine, who was in a hot war against Russia that, of course, we now know has exploded, in order to extort Ukraine to help his campaign. That seems quaint compared to what he did January 6th, what he's done with the classified documents, what he has promised to do with his nominees. And so I think there's, a multi-pronged strategy here. Yes, the first thing not the first thing, but what ultimately we need to do over the next 2 years is make it so that we certainly take back the House in the majority so we can have some control and provide a much greater check and balance on everything that Trump wants to do. Maybe the Senate, although that's going to be difficult just in terms of the cycle. But there are two different avenues that I see where we're going right now. One is going to be legislative. Okay. He's going to have a much tougher road to hoe legislatively than he thinks. The House majority right now for the Republicans is 2. And we saw how dysfunctional the House Republicans were last Congress in not being able to agree on much of anything. Many of them just want to burn the House down. They are incapable of passing a budget without Democrats. They are going to be incapable of raising the debt ceiling without Democrats. So there are going to be times when we have leverage. And what I and many others are urging is that we be willing to go to the mat to use that leverage, because it doesn't come along very often. And when it does, we have to be willing to make some sacrifices. We have to be willing to shut the government down if need be, because the only way that we're going to get our priorities through is by playing hardball. And I mean much harder ball than we played in December, where we were able to stave off some of the worst possibilities, but there were bipartisan priorities that were originally agreed to that really were at our insistence that ultimately didn't get in. So that's one aspect of it. On the other side is what goes on in the executive branch. And we talked a lot about these nominees. Right now, our focus has to be on opposing the really egregious nominees. And that, in large part, requires us to make sure that everyone understands that it is not just Democrats who are responsible for our democracy and our Constitution. Republicans take an oath to the Constitution, not to Donald Trump. They should not escape accountability by just going along with Trump's authoritarian instincts. They are responsible for our democracy. The Senate has an advice and consent responsibility to ensure that our cabinet officials are not just political sycophants trying to get retribution on political enemies like you would see in a banana republic. And so it is going to be on the Senate Republicans, given that they're in the majority, to uphold our Constitution. And one of the things that we can do is continue to put pressure on some of those purple state Republicans. Tom Tillis in North Carolina has re-election.
That's my state. Yep.
Yeah. You've got Susan Collins. You've got some of the Republicans in more moderate states who need to be held accountable for their acquiescence to Donald Trump's authoritarianism. And they need to be able to stand up for what is right and what is constitutional, not whatever Donald Trump wants. And so the message will evolve, the challenges will come. It's now the nominations. It will be plenty of other things that are going to, the tax cuts for the wealthy that are coming in reconciliation. But we as a coalition, both on the inside and on the outside, through folks like you and other engaged Americans, have a voice that matters and resonates. And it's going to be really important that we all together join in and focus on the right things that are the most dangerous and serious threats, and band together to prevent the true dismantling of our democracy. So my eyes are wide open. I know we're in for it. I certainly will be in the trenches fighting every day to make sure that Donald Trump remembers that he won the election because he made all these promises to the middle class, not because he promised political retribution, not because he promised to pardon the January 6th criminals. And we're going to make sure that he is held to his promises, along with the help from those Americans who truly support democracy.